From galaxies and stars, down to atoms and subatomic particles, the very structure of our universe is determined by these numbers. These are the fundamental constants and quantities of the universe. Scientists have come to the shocking realization that each of these numbers has been carefully dialed to an astonishingly precise value, a value that falls within an exceedingly narrow, life-permitting range. If any one of these numbers were altered by even a hair's breadth, no physical, interactive life of any kind could exist anywhere. There'd be no stars, no life, no planets, no chemistry. Consider gravity, for example. The force of gravity is determined by the gravitational constant. If this constant varied by just 1 in 10 to the 60th parts, none of us would exist. To understand how exceedingly narrow this life-permitting range is, imagine a dial divided into 10 to the 60th increments. To get a handle on how many tiny points on the dial this is, compare it to the number of cells in your body, or the number of seconds that have ticked by since time began. If the gravitational constant had been out of tune by just one of these infinitesimally small increments, the universe would either have expanded and thinned out so rapidly that no stars could form and life couldn't exist, or it would have collapsed back on itself with the same result: no stars, no planets, and no life. Or consider the expansion rate of the universe. This is driven by the cosmological constant. A change in its value by a mere 1 part in 10 to the 120th parts would cause the universe to expand too rapidly or too slowly. In either case, the universe would again be life-prohibiting. Or another example of fine-tuning. If the mass and energy of the early universe were not evenly distributed to an incomprehensible precision of 1 part in 10 to the 10 to the 123rd, the universe would be hostile to life of any kind. The fact is, our universe permits physical, interactive life only because these, and many other numbers, have been independently and exquisitely balanced on a razor's edge. Wherever physicists look, they see examples of fine-tuning. The remarkable fact is that the values of these numbers seem to have been very finely adjusted to make possible the development of life. If anyone claims not to be surprised by the special features that the universe has, he's hiding his head in the sand. These special features are surprising and unlikely. The best explanation for why the universe is fine-tuned for life may very well be it was designed that way. A common-sense interpretation of the facts suggests that a super-intellect monkeyed with physics, and that there are no blind forces worth speaking about in nature. The numbers one calculates from the facts seem to me so overwhelming as to put this conclusion almost beyond question. There is for me powerful evidence that there is something going on behind it all. It seems as though somebody has fine-tuned nature's numbers to make the universe. The impression of design is overwhelming. The heavens declare the glory of God. The skies proclaim the work of his hands. Day after day they pour forth speech. Night after night they reveal knowledge.
To Foothills Christian Church, I am Douglas Peak, and I will be bringing your message today. And our third proof that shows us that God is real is based on a simple scientific fact, and that is the incredible fine-tuning of our universe in order to sustain life. Now, if you're here visiting with us today for the first time on campus, watching for the first time online, we are glad you're here with us. We're currently in this series, 5 Proofs of Why God is Real, and our church is all about coaching you up in your faith. And one of the parts of coaching is inspiration. And this series is all about helping you believe and know and take steps to becoming a more mentally strong person. Being mentally strong is very important when you run into opposing ideas or criticisms about what you believe and why you believe it. So you need to believe and know that you can think for yourself, you can make up your own mind, and you don't have to have an IQ of 180 to do it. You can believe without a shadow of a doubt that your faith is built on a solid foundation of intellectual rigor, historical accuracy, archaeological discovery, and scientific exploration. And once you realize this, a strong conviction that your faith is rational, it's not irrational, it's built on strong scholarship, it's not mythology, then you grow stronger in your own faith, and you go stronger mentally as a person. So in our church, our goal is to help you take the next step. Whether you need a little bit of coaching, and you're just starting out, or you need a lot of coaching and you're 30 years deep into it, you can scan this QR code, especially if you're online. It takes you to a Connect card. You can find it, fill out prayer requests. You can find out things, kind of connect with us and help your journey. We love QR codes because they are accessible anonymously. Also, if you're a college student, you're a young adult, want to take another step, you can just come over to my house today, have pizza for lunch, hang out, meet other young, beautiful, intelligent people. I'm not one of those, but they gather at my home for lunch. So if you're a college student or something, you want a place where you get free food, that's your ticket. Also, guys, men's boot camp is coming. You do not want to miss the boot camp. It's awesome. Ladies, the best thing you'll ever do is send your husband to boot camp. So get up there. This year we're going to have a special guest, Hazen, who has a TV show on Nat Geo, and you're going to want to come. He's going to teach us some life skills and bushwhacking skills. So you're going to want to hit those guys. It's coming up in 2 weeks from now, and love for you to get registered today. You do that off the QR code. So the proof that we're going to be talking about today is based on the scientific discovery that the universe is incredibly fine-tuned. There is no astrophysicist or cosmologist that disagrees with that. They are across the board, this is pretty fine-tuned in order to support life. Now, how does this prove there is a God? Well, what happens is they disagree on how it got to be so fine-tuned. And that's where our proof comes in, okay? It starts this way. The fine-tuning of the universe to support life is due to either physical necessity, chance, or design. So everybody basically says there's only 3 options that it could happen to be so precisely tuned in order to support life. The first option is physical necessity. And physical necessity is basically the idea that says, well, it happened because it's here. So you think about that a little bit, and you're going, okay, we'll talk more about that in a second. The second one is chance. And this is the notion that if given enough time and enough opportunity, eventually a universe would come into existence this well fine-tuned to support life, okay? The third one is, well, actually it was designed this way from the beginning. There's a designer that did it, all right? So that's the first proof. And this premise of the proof, this first premise is universally accepted, all right? And so you go to the second premise, and this is where people start to get disagreeing with one another. The fine-tuning of the universe to support life cannot be due to physical necessity or chance. So it says basically that the first 2 are not rational options. That requires you then to ask, well, why not? The first one is physical necessity. Physical necessity is this notion that it's here, so it had to happen. Okay, that doesn't actually answer the question, well, why did it happen? Or what caused it to happen? It'd be like this. You're marching through the Sahara Desert, There's nothing out there. You're dying of thirst as you march through the desert. Nothing but, sand dunes everywhere. You're thinking, oh my goodness, and you come up, and there, lo and behold, is this beautiful water cooler with chilled water in it, with that 5-gallon thing of water on top of it, with a little Dixie cup. And so you sit down there and you start filling it up and you're drinking it and you're drinking it. And you ask yourself as you quench your thirst, why in the world is this here? Physical necessity would say your answer is because I needed it to be. You see how that doesn't make a lot of sense? It's like a magic. It had to be because it had to be. It doesn't make any sense. It's not very rational. Very few people really adopt the notion of physical necessity. The second one is chance. You know what chance is? Chance is the idea, it's a kind of a Darwinian position that if given enough time and enough opportunity, you would create a universe that could be this fine-tuned to support life. But the difficulty is that this position became untenable, meaning it was really hard to hold to when something happened in the 60s. And prior to the 60s, everybody believed that the universe was infinite. So there would be an infinite amount of time and opportunity, right? Because it was an oscillating universe. It was expanding and contracting throughout infinity. No beginning, no end. Well, there was a guy by the name of Jorge Lemaitre, and he was a Belgian physicist and mathematician. And what he did is he came up with the notion that based on the mathematics, the universe cannot be expanding and then collapsing. Because all these numbers, these constants don't work if you believe that it contracts. He says, the only way that this thing can work is if it started from a single particle, the Big Bang, and then has been expanding in one direction, and it's running out of energy. And then they were able to measure this background radiation and prove that this was the case. Oh, by the way, Jorge was a Belgian priest as well. It's kind of interesting. And at that moment, what happened is everybody realized that chance doesn't work because there's not enough time for it to work. The other issue is probability. And that is that mathematically, probability says the more you try, probability says the less ordered or fine-tuned it will be. Probability says the chances of you finding high order and high fine-tuning is so remote that you could say it's impossible. It's kind of like this. It's kind of like if you had all the pieces to this clock, right? And they were all broken down into all of the little electronic, the diodes and all of the things that make up the battery are all separated. And, you throw them in a box, just pieces. And you throw a few other things in there, like your car keys and something else. And what happens is you take this box, if you had all these pieces, and then you shook it. And all these pieces would magically then come out fully assembled, a clock with the right time. How many times would I have to do that with all those pieces and parts before that actually happened? You would say, that's impossible. That's called probability. And mathematicians say the probability, I better get my car keys or I'll forget on my way home. The probability of that happening is so low, and there's not enough time to do it. So the second premise is it can't be due to physical necessity, and it can't be due to chance. Therefore, it's due to design, meaning there is a designer. Now, a lot of people today in the realm of science are people who have a religion, and their religion is atheism. Their religion is scientism. Their religion is materialism. And their religious tenet is we only believe that which can be proven or measured by scientific method. Of course, people who don't adhere to their religious beliefs say something, well, you can't prove everything that you experience every single day through scientific method. And they say, oh, that's not true. And then we say, yes, it is. And then they go, no, it's not. And we say, yes, it is. No, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's not. Yes, it is. No, it's not. It just goes on and on and on. But to help you decide whether it is or not, I want you to hear a testimony from a woman, Dr. Rosalind Wright Picard. She is a professor of media and art sciences at MIT. She is the founder of the Effective Computing Research Group, co-founder of Affectiva and Empatica. Okay? And this company basically consults on how human beings interact with computers. And so when you pull out your iPhone or your Google phone or your Android or whatever, whenever you know the haptics on it and all the sounds and all the different visuals that it does for you, that all comes from her science department and her companies. So that's what she does. She is, in 2021, she was elected to the National Academy of Inventors. She is a fellow of the Institute of Electrical and Electronics Engineers, the IEEE, which is a very prestigious institute. She's also fellow of the Association for Computing Machinery, ACM, and in 2022, she was awarded the International Lombardi Prize for Computer Science Research. This comes with a prize twice that as the Nobel Peace Prize. And she took that award and she donated it to scientific research in computer sciences. And she says something that is really interesting about materialism or scientism and about what she personally believes and her journey from atheism to believer. Let's listen.
Really, at the heart of science, you have to have a belief that there's truth, that there's something greater to be discovered.
So let me ask that old question. What do you think this thing is all about? It's the life on Earth?
And as I learned about that, I changed my viewpoint gradually from an atheist to an agnostic to a theist to somebody who actually believed that the historical Jesus and the New Testaments, what's written about him, was true.
You said scientists too often assume that nothing exists beyond what can be currently measured.
Yeah,
in some
materialism
materialism
and scientism, yeah.
So in some sense, this assumption enables the near-term scientific method, assuming that we can uncover the mysteries of this world by the mechanisms of measurement that we currently have. But we easily forget that we've made this assumption. Right? So what do you think we miss out on by making that assumption? That
It's fine to limit the scientific method to things we can measure and reason about and reproduce. That's fine. I think we have to recognize that sometimes we scientists also believe in things that happen historically. You know, like I believe the Holocaust happened. I can't prove events from past history scientifically. You prove them with historical evidence, right? With the impact they had on people, with eyewitness testimony and things like that. So a good thinker recognizes that science is one of many ways to get knowledge. It's not the only way. And there's been some really bad philosophy and bad thinking recently, you can call it scientism, where people say science is the only way to get to truth. And it's not. It just isn't. There are other ways that work also, like knowledge of love with someone. You don't prove your love through science, right? So history, philosophy, love, a lot of other things in life show us that there's more ways to gain knowledge and truth, if you're willing to believe there is such a thing, and I believe there is, than science. I am a scientist, however, and in my science, I do limit my science to the things that the scientific method can do. But I recognize that it's myopic to say that that's all there is.
right,
Oh, isn't that interesting? Here's a scientist who's also a person who went from atheist to a follower of Christ, and no one can argue that she's not a high IQ individual. And so I want to show you these things to let you know that the purpose of doing this is that, and in many ways, your faith is under assault in ways that you don't know. And primarily it happens at the university level, and it is happening in the Ivy Leagues in particular, and it's happening for the sole purpose of disengaging you from the society in which you live. so that your faith becomes nothing but a personal faith. It's what you believe on the inside, but you don't live it out, and you certainly don't advocate for values that make a difference in society. And that's why we have all this craziness going on today, right? That's why we've now got entire communities of people that are rallying in the streets screaming death to America as they live in America. And I'm like, that seems odd to me. I don't, how did that happen? You know, just recently, right now, rabbis in New York have issued, basically advice is that all Jewish students enrolled at Columbia University are now leaving the campus because the anti-Semitism and the pro-Hamas protesters have become so aggressive and so violent that they are no longer safe in that environment. And I'm like, this whole thing happened in Europe just 80-something years ago. And now it's happening again. How do these things happen? Well, it happens when Christians feel insecure about the rationality and strength of what they believe. And when we have the strength and the knowledge that what we believe is not only good, it's not only pure, it's not only righteous, but it's also intellectually sound, it is rational, it is scientifically proofed, then what we start to realize is, wait a second, there's a little grift going on here, a deception. And we need to stop sitting back and thinking less of ourselves. We need to stand tall with our chins up, facing the challenges of this world with respect and love, but with power, courage, and strength. And when we do that, the world in which we live becomes a better place. Certainly not like the crazy stuff that's happening now. And that's why this proof is so powerful. It's so powerful for your faith. The first thing it does is it shows you how beautiful and wonderful God really is. When you start to see how fine-tuned the universe is. Maybe you missed some of those numbers, but they said the gravitational force is 1 to the 60th power. And then they said, compare that number to the cells in your body. Can you imagine how many cells are in your body right now? Well, guess what? That's 1 to the 14th power. It's not even close to 1 to the 60th. And yet, if you were to take every cell of your body, right, and then you multiplied that times 3 or 4, you get close to 1 to the 60th. If you're a mathematician out there right now, you're probably thinking, man, his math is not very good. And you would be correct, right? I married into a family of mathematicians. I am not one of them. And so what happened is, basically, you take that, you say, well, if there were 4 of me up here, if one cell was off, there'd be no life. That's how fine-tuned it is. And when we look at it and study it, we start to realize, when you see this fine-tuning, how incredible the designer really is. Listen to Psalms 19, 1 and 2. It was in the video. I want to read it again. The heavens are telling the glory of God. Isn't that awesome? The heavens, this entire universe is telling the glory of God, and their expanse is declaring the work of his hands. Day to day pours forth speech. In other words, everything you see, everything we study, everything we learn is screaming that God, the designer of this universe, is more incredible than we could ever imagine. It says, and night to night reveals knowledge. The night sky shows us all of these things about the wonder and beauty of God. I mean, this is so amazing to be able to see this proof and how finely tuned the universe is in order to sustain life when we're talking about the infinite belief in who God is and his nature. We cannot begin to fathom the depth of God. And it reminds me all the time, like, when things aren't going my way, how difficult, and strange it might sound when I say, God, why are you doing things this way? God, why are you doing this to me? And it reminds me of what he told Job, and that is, well, were you around when I started the universe? No, I guess I wasn't. You see what I'm saying? He said, this proof impacts my relationship with God because it puts me in the right perspective of who God really is. And so that's a very important thing. The other thing that it does is it shows that the universe has a designer, God, and this designer not only designed the universe, but he designed me. Look at Psalms 147, beginning with verse 5. It says, let's go verse 4. He counts the numbers of the stars. He gives names to all of them. So every star, you see, is a galaxy, right? Or a solar system in a galaxy. And so he knows every planet, every sun, every red dwarf. He knows every galaxy, every universe. He has a name for every one of them. And it isn't SM3598. This is stuff that astrophysicists give them, these numbers. God has them all by name. It says, great is our Lord and abundant in strength. His understanding is infinite. This word comes from a Hebrew word that actually means infinity. So it's innumerable. His understanding cannot be numbered. There's no limit to his knowledge and his understanding. Boy, doesn't that really start to blow your mind about how incredible the nature of God is? And where do we get this idea? Simply from looking at the massive, size of the universe in which we exist. If you flip back to chapter 139, beginning with verse 13, it says the following. For thou didst form my inward parts. Thou didst weave me in my mother's womb. I will give thanks to thee, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are thy works, and my soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from thee when I was made in the secret or innermost place and skillfully wrought in the depths of the earth. I was woven together, skillfully wrought in the depths of the earth. God not only knows the stars and the galaxies and the universe by name, there is also no limit to his understanding. It is infinite. He also knows you and every cell of your body. He designed you the way that you are, and he knows how many hairs are upon your head. It's more difficult for others than some, but that's okay. Isn't that amazing? So when you think about this proof and you think about this and you think about God's design of you, and then you stand in front of a mirror some morning and you go, oh, I hate my hair. It's just not good. Man, God, why do I have this body type? Now, okay, this one is a little bit more difficult because I realize that my diet and exercise has a lot to do with my body type. But I'll tell you what, all the lifting and running and all the rabbit food isn't going to change some things, right? One of the things that happens a lot here is that because we're online, many people will watch online before they come on campus. So all of you watching online, you're always invited to come on campus. But let me explain to you something that happens. I stand out front and greet people. And a lot of times people will come up and they will say, this happens probably 2 or 3 times a month easily. They'll say, well, you don't know us, but we know you very well. And I say, really? They go, yeah, we've been watching online. It's great to meet you in person finally. And so over time, it takes me a while to learn a witty reply. I'm a little slow in some of those areas. But I basically said, so how do I look different? Now, I am using the chance approach because I'm fishing for a particular comment, right, about my looks in this situation. And to date, I have never had it yet. right? Every single time. I mean, the hundreds of times that I've asked this, I will always say, so how do I look different? They always say the same thing. You're much taller in real life. And I'm thinking, well, doesn't the camera add 10 pounds, 20 if you're tall? I want them to all say, you're much thinner in real life. But I have never once got that comment. So I will just keep asking it and use the probability of chance that one day someone might say, well, you actually look thinner in real life than you do on camera. And I will go, yes, it happened because of physical necessity. I needed it to happen. You see, the whole point is this, is that if God has designed the universe and that he has designed you, it has a huge impact on your faith. When you realize that the designer of the universe has woven you into the tapestry of his sovereign will, and that he knew you and your existence when you were knit together or wrought. I love the way they say that, right? In the secret depths of the earth, skillfully wrought. Then there's something in your life that's about your life that has a deep soul objectivity to it. That what you're going through and what you're experiencing and how you're growing and stuff is not just simply a individual, selfish-driven, understanding of your environment, but there's also things objectively happening. And these are things that you can arm wrestle with and grow through and ultimately overcome. See, the problem with atheism or scientism, scientific materialism, secularism, humanism, all these isms, is that number one, they're difficult to say quickly. But the other problem with them is that they rob you of real life. You see, being a skeptic is not about saying, I suspend belief until it's proven. No, whatever you believe is a worldview and it has consequences. And this is where I think it's really important to understand humanism and atheism and its devastating impact on our world. Because what it brings is it brings hopelessness and meaningless. It robs people of life, any meaning or value to who they are as individuals. For instance, you don't have to believe in God to experience true love in your life. I know people who don't believe in God, they're not followers, and they meet someone and they fall in love and they bond with that person and they live a life with that person and they lose that person and they mourn for years because they felt this person was the love of my life. So you don't have to believe in God to experience true love. But if there is no God, guess what? There is no true love. What you experienced wasn't real, according to the atheist. What you went through, it doesn't actually exist. It's an illusion of your mind. You don't have to believe in God in any way, shape, or form to find a purpose in your life. You can make one up, and you can live for that purpose. But guess what? If there's no God, then there's no real purpose in life to be found. It's simply a figment of your imagination. You see, the belief that you have value, that you matter in this world, that what you believe and your convictions, the way you live, can make the world a better place, that's just an illusion. It doesn't actually exist. If you want to make one up, great, but if not, You see, you can have purpose in life, but if there's no God, then there is actually no purpose to be found. There is no objective purpose. According to Bruce Hood in his book, The Self-Illusion, Sam Harris, another atheist, blogs about it. He says, all of these things, true love, yourself, purpose, value, are all illusions of your mind that your mind creates. They're not real because there's nothing outside of you that can actually exist. You don't need to believe in God to experience hope in your life. But if there is no God, then there is no hope to be found in life. If there's no God, if there is no hope, if you're a hurting, broken, you're in need of healing and wholeness, if you are suffering, the only thing that sustains you through that difficult time is hope. When you start off and you fall in love and you want to build a family together, you have a vision of the future of what your family would be like. That is hope for a better future and a better world. But in a material world, then hope is not possible. It doesn't exist outside of yourself because it can't be measured. It can't be proven by science. Just recently, I was talking to someone who said, Pastor, I need some hope in my dating life. I know a lot of single people. And they've been saying the same thing a lot recently, and that is, why is dating so difficult? You know, why is it so hard to find a soulmate or someone to fall in love with and be with? It seems like everybody I date is a narcissist. So I hear a lot of people reflecting that. And I say, well, partly what you're saying is true. And you know why most people today are narcissists? Because of secularism and atheism. That's what it produces. Philosophically, it's called solipsism, and solipsism is a philosophical term that refers to, since you can't prove anything outside of yourself to be real, the only thing that is actually real in your environment is yourself. So you operate purely out of a narcissistic motivation. Isn't that interesting? That's what it produces. You don't need to believe in God to experience a fulfillment of creating something. I mean, you can be a person, you don't have to believe in God to go and see in your mind this beautiful house and then, get the materials and then design and build the house, right? And move it. You don't have to believe in God to do that. And you move in and you go, wow, this is really cool. You don't have to believe in God to say, wow, I see this unique opportunity in this business. I'm going to move into this little space here. I'm going to start this business. I'm going to do this. You start closing deals. You're making money. You're moving up. You can feel a lot of self-satisfaction as, wow, I found this unique business opportunity and it's growing. You can feel fulfillment in creating and building things and still not believe in God. But I can tell you this, if there is no God, there's no meaning in anything that you build or do. Think about that. It's just a figment of your imagination. Dr. Rosalind Picard said something, and this is an abstract point, but it's critical. And this is why I believe that America is falling behind scientifically. This is why you don't hear of all of the scientific innovations and exploration that we read about in our past, sending a man to the moon and doing all these crazy things. It's like, where is all that innovation happening? Why don't we have as much of it today as we did 50 or 60 years ago? Well, Dr. Rosalind Picard stated this. He says, you must believe that there is a truth out there to go and discover. You notice what she said? You have to believe. What is the word belief? Beliefs cannot be scientifically measured or proven. So to the materialist, the scientist of scientism says they don't actually exist. She says you must have a belief. Even though there's no scientific evidence that there's something out there I can go and discover. We can explore, we can develop, we can dig into it, we can find out. But the very essence of the creative mind, the innovative mind, the discovery mind, the explorer mind, the builder mind, all originates from a singular mind. And you know what that mind is? It's a faith mind. It is the belief. The faith that there are things yet to be discovered. I don't know about you, when I look and hear about the fine-tuning of the universe, I go, we are scratching the surface. I mean, I can't imagine what my great-grandkids are going to be discovering, only if we free science from the religion of atheism. We must fight for these things. Why should we teach them? Why should we care as people of faith? Some people think, well, Pastor, I just like a more in-depth study of the book of Revelation right now. I want to know what all those trumpets are about. I'm saying, well, there's a lot of good stuff that you can study in there. If you want to go deep into Scripture, the best place to do that is in our small groups and in our discipleship. That's our primary way to do that. It's the best way to do it. Salty Pastor, we do in-depth studies on the scripture as well that leads up to these messages. But these things that we're talking about are the big themes of the Bible. That there is a God, he's designed the universe, he's designed you. And we're not going to grow and advance until we step back onto the foundation of what the scripture taught. Why should we fight for these things? Because when you fight for rational thinking, when you fight for the faith, when you contend for the faith, when you defend the faith, you're fighting for life. All kinds of life. You're fighting for love. You're fighting for hope. You're fighting for meaning and purpose. You're fighting for the value of each individual who walks the face of this earth. You're fighting for the sovereignty of each person to choose for themselves who they are. It is you're fighting for the future. You're fighting for the prosperity of our society. So let us remember that these things are the foundational stones that allow us to fight in the name of Christ for some of the most important things of all, and that is the essence of real life. Let's stand for closing prayer. Lord, we just bless you and thank you for being a God who is so infinite we will never understand your wisdom and grace. Amen. God bless you guys and see you next Sunday.